Welcome to the Pulse from Optify. Today we will delve into the economic and market conditions of the United States, which are experiencing significant daily stock market declines and heightened concerns about a potential trade war, rising prices, legally questionable mass federal layoffs, and the ominous specter of stagflation.
It seems we're witnessing a convergence of factors that are contributing to a sense of economic unease.
Indeed, we're seeing major stock market indices like the S&P 500, Dow Jones, and Nasdaq all experiencing significant drops. Some analysts are even predicting a potential 25% decline.
Ah.
They're calling it a potential flash crash scenario similar to what happened back in 1987. Could you explain what they mean by that?
A flash crash refers to a sudden, rapid, and often unexpected drop in stock prices. It's usually triggered by a confluence of factors, including algorithmic trading, panic selling, and a lack of liquidity in the market. In 1987, the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged over 22% in a single day, sending shockwaves through the global financial system. Some analysts believe that the current market conditions, coupled with anxieties over trade wars and government policies, could create a similar scenario.
That's a scary thought. And the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now model is indicating that the U.S. economy might actually be shrinking, adding fuel to this fire.
Yes, the GDP Now model, which is a real-time estimate of economic growth based on available data, has been revised downwards recently, suggesting a contraction in economic activity. This is certainly a cause for concern, especially when combined with other economic indicators like rising inflation and the potential for a trade war.
Let's talk about the trade war. President Trump's tariffs on goods from Canada, Mexico, and China are creating some serious international tension. Canada has already started boycotting U.S. goods, and economists are worried about the long-term consequences of these actions. What kind of impact are these tariffs having on specific industries?
The impact is already being felt across various sectors. For instance, the U.S. wine and whiskey industries are experiencing a decline in sales due to Canada's boycott. This is a direct consequence of the tariffs and retaliatory measures imposed by Canada.
Right.
In addition, the Canadian government has increased taxes on electricity exports to the U.S. by 25%. These are just a couple of examples, but they highlight the potential for these trade wars to escalate quickly and impact businesses on both sides of the border.
And on top of everything else, we have these mass federal layoffs, which are raising legal questions and concerns about their potential ripple effect on the economy.
These layoffs are indeed a double-edged sword. On one hand, they are part of a broader strategy to reduce government spending, which is a stated goal of the current administration. However, the sudden and large-scale nature of these layoffs is causing immediate economic hardship for the workers and their families. There are also concerns about the legality of these actions and whether they are being implemented strategically or haphazardly. Some argue that these layoffs are a short-sighted approach that could ultimately cost more in the long run by creating inefficiencies and disrupting critical government services.
Mark Cuban, the entrepreneur and investor, has even offered to invest in consulting firms started by laid-off federal workers, specifically mentioning those from the General Services Administration's 18F office.
Oh, really?
He believes they have valuable skills and expertise that could be utilized to address potential problems created by these cuts. He even said, "It's just a matter of time before DOGE needs you to fix the mess they inevitably create."
Cuban's statement highlights a growing sentiment that perhaps these cuts are being made too hastily without considering the long-term implications. He's suggesting that these workers possess valuable institutional knowledge and skills that could be lost, potentially leading to more significant issues down the line.
So we have a contracting economy, a trade war, and mass layoffs. All of this seems to point to a growing fear of stagflation, rising inflation, combined with stagnant economic growth. Yet, the Trump administration continues to claim that everything is fine, that the economy is simply going through a detox period. Is this just a PR spin, or are they genuinely downplaying the risks?
This raises an important question about transparency and the information being presented to the public. Are we getting the full picture of the economic situation, or are certain aspects being downplayed for political reasons? This lack of clarity adds to the uncertainty and makes it difficult for investors and businesses to make informed decisions. Some critics argue that the administration is deliberately downplaying the risks to avoid further market panic, while others believe they genuinely believe in their policies and their ability to deliver long-term economic prosperity.
And then there's Elon Musk, a close advisor to President Trump, who's been vocal about his support for these policies. He predicts a period of temporary hardship, but believes it's necessary for long-term economic prosperity under Trump's agenda. What's your take on Musk's perspective?
Musk's comments reflect the administration's narrative that short-term pain is necessary for long-term gain. They argue that by restructuring the economy through government program cuts and deregulation, they can create a more efficient and competitive environment for businesses to thrive. However, critics question whether this pain will be evenly distributed and whether the promised long-term prosperity will materialize for everyone. They argue that these policies primarily benefit the wealthy and corporations while leaving ordinary Americans to bear the brunt of the economic hardship.
It seems like there's a real divide in how people are interpreting the current economic situation. Some analysts are ringing alarm bells and predicting a recession, while others remain optimistic, highlighting the relatively stable job market and potential buying opportunities in the stock market.
This highlights the importance of looking beyond the headlines and understanding the nuances of the situation.
No.
Are we overreacting to short-term volatility, or are we ignoring warning signs of a deeper economic crisis?
Right.
It's crucial to consider both perspectives and to be prepared for a range of possibilities. We need to analyze the data, understand the different arguments, and make informed decisions based on our own circumstances. It's interesting how you frame that, a tale of two economies, because for the individual investor, it's important to remember that the stock market is inherently cyclical. What we're seeing now is a correction, and corrections are a normal part of the market cycle. These corrections can be unsettling, but they also present opportunities.
So for those who might be seeing this as a buying opportunity, are there any specific sectors or industries that look particularly attractive right now?
That's where your individual risk tolerance and investment goals come into play. If you're a long-term investor with a diversified portfolio, riding out the storm might be the best strategy after all, as Victoria Green pointed out. Historically, when markets decline this hard and fast, they tend to snap back in a V-shaped recovery. If you're closer to retirement or have a lower risk tolerance, you might consider adjusting your portfolio accordingly. As for specific sectors, it's always best to do your research and consult with a financial advisor. However, sectors less affected by trade tensions and have strong fundamentals might be worth considering.
That makes sense. But it's important to remember that we're not just talking about numbers and market fluctuations. This is about people's lives.
Yeah.
There's a human side to this story. People losing their jobs, families struggling to make ends meet, and communities facing economic hardship. What are we hearing about the impact on the ground?
You're absolutely right. Beyond the abstract economic indicators, there are real people whose lives are being impacted by these policies. For instance, we're hearing reports about landlords losing tenants due to the federal layoffs, cities and towns facing decreased revenue, and families losing benefits. This paints a rather bleak picture, especially when you consider the possibility that these layoffs could be a catalyst for a recession, as some analysts are suggesting.
It almost feels like President Trump and his allies are intentionally trying to crash the economy to further concentrate wealth and power. Is there any validity to that perspective?
That's a serious accusation. While it's understandable that people are looking for explanations amidst the uncertainty, it's important to examine the evidence carefully. It's crucial to separate genuine concerns about economic policies from potentially unfounded conspiracy theories.
Fair enough. But it's hard not to feel skeptical when you see figures like Elon Musk, a billionaire who clearly benefits from the current system, endorsing policies that could lead to economic hardship for many.
I understand the skepticism. Musk, echoing the administration's stance, believes that restructuring the economy through these controversial measures will ultimately lead to greater prosperity. The question is whether this pain is being evenly distributed and whether the promised long-term prosperity will materialize for everyone. Are there alternative approaches that could achieve similar results without causing such widespread disruption? That's a debate worth having.
This all feels incredibly complex. We have these looming economic challenges, a potential trade war, rising prices, massed federal layoffs, and the possibility of a recession. And we have the social and political implications of these challenges to consider as well. It's a lot to digest.
It absolutely is. It seems like a good point to try and recap some of the key takeaways from our discussion so far.
I agree. Let's try to make some sense of this complex situation.
First, we discussed the volatility in the stock market. The major indices are experiencing significant declines, and there are concerns about a potential flash crash, similar to 1987. This is being driven by a number of factors, including trade tensions, government spending cuts, and fears of a recession. We then examined the escalating trade war, particularly between the U.S. and Canada, and the potential for retaliatory tariffs to further impact businesses and consumers. These trade tensions are adding to the inflationary pressures already present in the economy. Then we delved into the mass federal layoffs, exploring their potential impact on individuals, families, and communities. Some experts are suggesting that these layoffs could exacerbate the economic downturn and potentially trigger a recession.
Right. And throughout our conversation, we've been circling this looming fear of stagflation. This scenario, characterized by rising inflation combined with stagnant economic growth, presents a significant challenge for policymakers as traditional economic solutions might prove ineffective.
Exactly. And we also can't forget the contrasting viewpoints we've explored. While some analysts are ringing alarm bells predicting a recession, others remain optimistic, pointing to a stable job market and potential buying opportunities in the stock market.
And then, of course, we have Elon Musk's perspective as a close advisor to President Trump. He's predicting a period of temporary hardship, but ultimately believes these policies will lead to long-term economic prosperity.
Ultimately, this leaves everyone grappling with a lot of uncertainty. The million-dollar question is whether the U.S. economy is truly in trouble or if this is just a temporary blip on the radar.
So where do we go from here? What can people do to navigate this uncertainty?
Well, that's what we'll explore in Part 3. Navigating this economic landscape can feel overwhelming, but remember, knowledge is power. The first step is to stay informed. Pay attention to what's happening in the economy, both domestically and globally.
So don't just skim the headlines.
Exactly. Go deeper than the headlines. Try to understand the underlying forces at play. And equally important, seek out diverse perspectives. Don't just rely on one source or one school of thought. We've seen how experts have differing opinions on the potential outcomes of these economic policies. Some believe President Trump's policies are leading us down a dangerous path towards recession, while others believe it's a necessary corrective measure for long-term growth.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. How do we know which information to trust? Which experts have the right answers?
That's where critical thinking comes in. Question assumptions, look for evidence, and don't be afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Consider the source of the information, their potential biases, and their track record. It's about developing your own informed opinion based on a balanced assessment of the available information.
That makes sense. But what about taking action? What practical steps can people take to protect themselves and their families in these uncertain times?
We've heard some interesting ideas emerge from our sources. Mark Cuban suggested those laid-off federal workers could leverage their skills and start consulting firms.
Right.
Others, like Bill Struzzulo, advise investors to consider taking some money off the table now, suggesting that opportunities to deploy that capital at better levels will emerge later this year.
And we can't forget President Trump's recent announcement about adding certain cryptocurrencies to the U.S. Strategic Reserve. That definitely got people talking. Although some argue it was a move designed to manipulate the market for the benefit of institutional investors.
Regardless of the intention, it highlights the growing interest in alternative investments in today's economy. These alternative investments, including cryptocurrencies, can offer potential opportunities for diversification and growth, but they also come with significant risks.
So proceed with caution.
Absolutely. It's crucial to do your research, understand the risks involved, and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
It seems like the key takeaway here is to stay informed, be adaptable, and make smart decisions based on individual circumstances.
Precisely. And one more thing, don't panic. We've encountered similar economic challenges in the past, and we've always found ways to adapt and overcome them.
That's a reassuring thought. We've covered a lot of ground today, from stock market volatility and trade wars to mass layoffs and the possibility of a recession. It's a complex and ever-changing landscape.
Indeed, but by staying informed, thinking critically, and remaining adaptable, we can navigate these turbulent waters and hopefully emerge stronger on the other side.
Thank you for joining us for this look at the U.S. economy. It's been a roller coaster of a conversation, but hopefully you feel better equipped to understand and navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.